Hello. This video is about preparation for microdosing. How to go into the process in order to extract maximal benefit from it. In future videos, I'll be talking about the context of enhanced learning and creative flow, how to use microdosing for those ends, but the points I make in this preparation video really apply to most applications of microdosing. So perhaps the most important thing about preparation for microdosing is understanding what it is, the opportunity it represents, and really how to think about that. Because many of the ways of handling the more specific advice in the subsequent videos on microdosing, those are going to be very personal choices. They're going to have to do with you and your assessed strengths and weaknesses, your path, your goals. But as far as preparation goes, the most important factor for anyone undertaking this is to really understand what microdosing is, the opportunity that it represents, and one particular thing that it's very important for folks who are engaging with microdosing to take into account before they go in. And all of this simple step will increase the likelihood that the microdosing will work effectively toward your goals. So what is microdosing? What is it essentially? What opportunity does it provide? And for this, I go to my earliest experiences as a teacher more than 30 years ago, as a math teacher in a prestigious private school where they had the math department, they had the math classes tracked. And what this means is that through assessment, they would rank the students basically from literally, they would call it the top class, all the way through the tiers to the bottom class. And the conventional wisdom among the math teachers, particularly the leadership, was that this was absolutely a stark distinction, that the top fourth grade math students, they can handle any curriculum. If you are doing the ordinary, arithmetic or geometry that a fourth grader might be doing, expect them to leave it in the dust in no time, and you are going to be spending your time. It's going to be energizing as a teacher because you're going to get to drum up all this original curriculum or draw on all this accelerated stuff that's going to be very challenging and cool. Whereas nothing could be more completely different, opposite, than the understanding of the bottom fourth grade math students. These kids were thought to be basically impaired. The assumption was that it was more or less permanent, that there was some innate intelligence that belonged to some people and not to others, and that really there was nothing you could do about this. And if you were the math teacher of such a group, a bottom class of, say, 9-year-olds in math, you would do best to choose an extremely conservative curriculum that emphasized just drill, just try to get them to, in the words of one administrator, be able to do their grocery list. So any idea of imparting the beauty, the mysticism, the power of mathematics, the creativity of thinking mathematically, the bottom students were believed to not have access to those things. They really, really, really were thought to be a completely different species of learner from the so-called top math students. Now, when I arrived here, I was in my early 20s, and I had come from a fancy university, and I was a creative and innovative teacher with a lot of energy. So I was given the top class, and I was told this is a great compliment to your teaching, and again urged to be absolutely out of the box and wildly creative because these kids are brilliant and they can do anything. And I had a great time with them, and I came up with all sorts of innovative curriculum. I would do like chessboard problems and geometry puzzles and all kinds of logic stuff, and it was really great. And the years went by, and really just a couple of years went by, and I requested the bottom fourth grade class. I was really deeply curious about what it would be like to have in one year, in the same academic year, a top class and a bottom class, because the assumed difference in their capacities was just insurmountable. There was a person's head would explode. They would basically go from doing this mathematics that was really engaging to them as someone really interested in the subject and challenging problems, and then like next period they would be doing just 5 times 5, 5 times 6, 5 times 7, because that was all these kids could handle, supposedly. So I requested the bottom fourth grade class to go along with the top one, and I was given some kind of sideways glances, like why would you want to do that? This is the really boring job. And I persisted, and so one academic year I wound up with the top fourth grade math class and the bottom fourth grade math class in one year. And to make a long story short, because I've already drawn the story out, I was able to implement the same curriculum in both classes. And my honest assessment at the end of the year, the bottom class performed almost as well, in many respects, as well as the top class. So this supposedly gigantic gulf didn't exist. So how was this accomplished? I found very, very quickly that one key was to give mathematics, present mathematics in such a way that it wasn't recognized as that. Because the kids in the bottom fourth grade class had just these wrecked self-images when it came to mathematics. So you would give them something to do with numbers, an arithmetic problem, and you would literally feel the breath seize up and the posture change and a sense of incapacitation and struggle. So the first key was to provide mathematics curriculum to these kids that wasn't recognizable as math. It was different from what they expected. They might have called it puzzles or games. So right away, when these supposed bottom students were tackling these puzzles, chessboard problems, geometry puzzles, logic puzzles, but without numbers and fractions and decimals associated with them, their powers increased, like dramatically, because the anxiety went down. And there was a sense that all of these preconceived notions, these habitual ways of thinking that had been associated with mathematics and had really been learned through negative experiences with mathematics mostly, were weakened, lessened. So more of their powers could emerge. Okay? And the most important thing, so this was a stepping stone, realizing that if I gave them curriculum that was kind of cleverly disguised in this way, I could really give them very challenging problems and they would rise to it. They proved that they were not incapacitated in math at all. In fact, they were very, very surprisingly intelligent, just like the top students, as 9-year-olds tend to be. So this is another moral of the story that really taught me, and this is the philosophy of microdosing, which is that generally people have a lot of powers. And education and interacting with the world, and in some ways that aren't insidious, but still you go through life and little by little stuff gets restricted, constricted, restricted, and by the time you're an adult you feel very limited. There are certain things I can do, but most things I can't. Okay, so and this is where the microdosing can be a real blessing, an incredible tool. So with those fourth grade math students, I was able to, in a sense, trick them into doing these very, very challenging problems by not triggering their habitual ways of thinking about math, about themselves, about their powers. But the ultimate thing, the deepest factor turned out to be, and this I learned through teaching older kids where you couldn't trick them, You would give them an innovative geometry problem, and they say, okay, this is just a different form of math. I stink at math, and the habitual patterns would go on like that. But really, it is about relaxation. It's that there's nobody who can think well. Maybe there are a few very specific kinds of thinking, but in order to think in a really expansive, creative way, if you have your microdosing plan, it involves in an 8-hour day or several days of kind of working on things that are important to you. Anxiety is a great burden. So the sense of newness, here is something that I don't recognize, a challenge that's new, and that is going to raise the attention level. And it also tends to bypass the habitual ways of thinking, because those are about things that are very familiar. I have this challenge all the time. This happens all the time. This is how I deal with it. This is me. This is the way I think. This is what goes in. This is what comes out. So newness, something being different, turns out to be a key factor. And an even more a considerable and general factor is the fundamental relief from anxiety. So being able to take that energy of anxiety and use it to create or learn or move. Microdosing can also be used for physical goals. So what can a psychedelic microdose do? And how can we connect it to this dramatic turnaround in the problem-solving powers of a 9-year-old math student, who basically goes from bottom to top, and you can imagine what that means for some person trying to use microdose to make a small breakthrough, to be a little more effective, a little more creative, a little more in touch. So the most fruitful way to think about the microdose and psychedelics in general is not that they are introducing an altered state by adding something to the equation of you, but rather that they are helping to remove blockages, assumptions, stale habits, rote ways of feeling and thinking. That's the key. So if the psychedelic is doing that, and a lot of people who work with psychedelics in all, in larger dose journeys, that's a very fruitful way to look at it. The psychedelic is essentially allowing you to emerge a little more in your most sort of fundamental powers, unburdened by all the habits that you've accumulated, the language that's constantly swimming around in your head and defining you and delineating you, telling you what you're good at and what you're no good at. The psychedelic is weakening those things and giving you a tremendous opportunity to not only learn something specific, make progress with something specific, but really learn about yourself. So in this way, a microdose can be looked at as restoring something of the quality of your child's mind, the mental quality that you had before you accumulated a lot of the habits, assumptions, you got rutted in certain ways of thinking. It's not your fault, that's the way it works, before you got specialized. So the microdose is opening up this potential for newness. And I want to emphasize that really just a subtle change is all that's necessary. The microdose can be really at the edge of being imperceptible. All it takes is just a little bit of the whole cognitive layout is new. And that newness automatically stokes motivation, improves attention, potentially. That newness adds excitement. It often is felt as a building of energy, okay? And it's certainly, to analogize with a 9-year-old, it improves your capacity to learn. And that goes for anything. So that's why the application could be healing work, where you're trying to learn different ways of thinking and feeling. It could be some creative project where you are literally trying to learn new ways of thinking in the moment. towards some goal that you have. So this heightened capacity to learn can be seen as a restoring of your innate childlike way of encountering the world and the challenges that you face. So now let's come back to this story about the top and bottom fourth grade math classes and the revelation that there really was no fundamental difference in these kids who had been deemed geniuses and these kids who had been deemed failures in mathematics at age 9. Seriously, and this is not an uncommon thing, this ranking of the students like this. But fundamentally, as I discovered, by giving very challenging curriculum, this would be curriculum that would be interesting for a professional mathematician, like really interesting, cool problems, but not the standard like 0.73 times 0.85. And the distinction completely evaporated, and suddenly the so-called bad math students were seen as tremendously empowered. So that involved alleviating the anxiety. So it's not only about newness, about this opportunity to take these assumptions about yourself and the way you work and the way you respond to problems and whether you're good at this thing or bad at this thing and all those distinctions that we start to make very young, and the ability to let those dissolve a little bit into the periphery as you tackle things with a sense of newness, a sense of that innate, childlike, incredible learning capacity and creativity restored. Okay, so this is the final thing I will say about preparation. So, and these things are general for everyone. So I really think for anybody using microdosing, you will do very well to really think about and make it personal, find ways of connecting it with your understanding, but to really understand this opportunity. Because if you say, well, I'm going to take a pill and it's going to make me more creative for a day, that's great. But if you go in with the spirit of I am going to be a little bit less glued to all of these assumptions about myself and the way I think and all these thinking habits that have accumulated in my adulthood, no fault of mine, but they have, and I'm going to have a little more freedom from them. And I understand that that's the opportunity. Then you have more leverage. It's more likely that you will succeed with it. Okay, and again, back to the 9-year-old math students, the most important thing is the state of the body. If the body is surging with anxiety because you recognize something and it's something that has always terrified you, and for a fourth grade math student that's in the bottom class, that might be multiplying fractions. And for you, it might be something that you're not even really consciously aware of in your job that happens once in a while, this particular type of challenge, and the breath seizes and gets shallow, and the body clenches a little bit. And the mental gears, even though they might not be at the forefront of consciousness, are going, I stink at this kind of thing. This isn't my wheelhouse. So, and all that stuff is going to cascade away. Now, the microdose offers a little bit of this newness that can just slice right through that. But you will need to work with the body. So some preparation in terms of awareness of the feelings in your body is a must for productive microdosing work. So it is very, very important, whatever your modality, and I will give a lot of suggestions for possibilities in the upcoming videos, but you would like to combine this understanding of the microdose as something that restores a newness and a childlike quality of the mind, an enhanced learning capability. You would like to take that understanding and combine it with the attention to the feelings in the body to obtain best results. There are two reasons to do this. One is that it'll reduce anxiety. If you are aware of what's going on in the body, even if you're aware of the physical manifestation of anxiety. Yes, anxiety is in the body. The thoughts that are associated with it might be in the head, and the whole thing's, of course, powered by the brain, but you will feel the anxiety in the body. So awareness of it will ease it out, will improve it. Awareness is like a medicine like that. And the second reason is that when you become aware of the body and you have a practice, you've gone into the microdosing session, let's say with 10 minutes of somatic awareness preparation, and you have this practice, then you will start to learn what it feels like to have a creative breakthrough. You will start to learn what it feels like in your body, maybe even particular parts of the body, what it feels like in the heart center or the throat or the gut. You'll learn to feel what it feels like to make breakthroughs, to be in the midst of the creative flow, to surmount challenges, to have a sense of accomplishment. All of these things that you would like to persist beyond the microdose, or to like keep growing and expanding and amplifying as you microdose or don't in the future and you engage in these kinds of things. All of that practice in awareness of how it feels will support whatever understandings you come to in your brain. So the somatic awareness component, okay, not only relieves anxiety right away, but it also gives you the opportunity to learn much more deeply. So that wraps this video on preparation for microdosing, how to understand microdosing, and the importance of working with awareness in the body. More to come. Thank you.